Hello and welcome to the Bovine Podcast, where we bring you the latest and greatest from the world of dairy. I'm your host, Bella, joined today by my partner in all things bovine, Douglas.
Great to be here, Bella. We've got an absolutely fascinating story for our listeners today. We're diving deep into the tale of one of the most influential cows in Holstein history, Snow-N Denises Dellia.
That's right, Douglas. Born in 1986 on a small Wisconsin farm, Dellia completely revolutionized dairy genetics. Her impact continues to shape herds worldwide almost 4 decades later.
Today we'll cover how Bob Snow's breeding strategy led to Dellia's creation, her remarkable show ring success, her legendary offspring, and how her genetics spread globally to transform the dairy industry.
So grab your milking stools and settle in, folks. This is a story every dairy farmer, breeder, and enthusiast needs to hear. Let's get started.
Bella, let's start at the beginning. Take us back to that December morning in 1986 when Dellia was born.
Picture this, Douglas. A crisp Wisconsin morning, frost on the barn windows, and on Bob Snow's farm, a Holstein calf takes her first wobbly steps. Little did Bob know, he had just witnessed the birth of a legend.
Who exactly was Bob Snow? I understand he wasn't your average dairy farmer.
You've got that right. Bob Snow was a Wisconsin bachelor whose idea of a hot date was poring over Holstein pedigrees. I know it sounds like he wasn't exactly a party animal, but this guy's obsession with cow genetics was about to change the dairy game forever.
So how did he get started in the breeding business?
Bob wasn't born with a silver milk pail in his mouth. He actually inherited a pretty average grade herd from his father. But somewhere along the line, he got bit by the registered Holstein bug, and bit hard. We're talking fever dream levels of Holstein mania here.
So when did things really start to take shape for his breeding program?
It was the 1970s, Douglas. While everyone else was doing the hustle, Bob was hustling to turn his Snow-N prefix into dairy royalty. His mission? Blend strength, udder quality, and milk yield into the perfect cow cocktail.
That sounds ambitious. How did he go about achieving that goal?
Here's where it gets interesting. In 1970, Bob crashes a herd dispersal sale in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. Now, most folks would be there for the free coffee and donuts, but not our Bob. He was a man on a mission.
What caught his eye at this particular sale?
Picture it. Dust in the air, the rapid-fire chatter of the auctioneer, and Bob Snow cool as a cucumber in a dairy case. He spots 2 cows that most people wouldn't look at twice. Syburg creator Hartog Phobes and her daughter, Syburg creator Phobes Garnet.
Those names don't exactly roll off the tongue. What made these cows special?
You're right about those names. These gals were sired by some obscure bull called Creator Phobes Governor. But Bob, he saw potential. He saw the 6th and 7th dams of a future legend.
So Bob had quite an eye for genetic potential.
Absolutely. And here's where Bob drops a truth bomb that'll make you spit out your milk. He said, and I quote, "I wasn't interested in the middle or the bottom. If I went to the sale, I would buy off the top."
So quality over quantity was his approach.
Exactly. Bob wasn't there for the bargain bin bovines. He wanted the cream of the crop, the top of the herd. And what he ended up with was a genetic cocktail that would make James Bond jealous.
How so?
On one side, you've got strength courtesy of MD Sunset View R.A. Wonder. On the other, dairy elegance via Carlin M. Ivanhoe Bell. Bob was essentially playing genetic Jenga, stacking traits and hoping it wouldn't all come crashing down.
And this strategy eventually led to Dellia?
Not immediately, Douglas, but it set the stage for what the industry would later call the Golden Cross. And that's where our story really starts getting good.
So Bella, tell us about this golden cross that led to Dellia's birth.
All right, folks, buckle up your overalls because we're about to dive into some serious bovine romance. You know how people talk about power couples? Well, in the dairy world, we've got power pairings, and boy, oh boy, did we hit the genetic jackpot with this one.
Who were these power parents?
On one side of this love story, we've got Walkway Chief Mark. Now, Chief Mark wasn't just any old bull. He was the Michelangelo of udders, a true specialist in the art of mammary magnificence. With a VG87 score, he was the kind of sire that made other bulls jealous.
And Delia's dam?
Intoned. Enter Snow-N Denises, our leading lady. This gal was packing some serious Bell family genes. We're talking about the perfect balance of frame and fertility. She was like the Swiss Army knife of cows, versatile, reliable, and scoring an impressive EX92 EGMD DOM.
That's quite a string of letters and numbers. Can you break that down for our listeners?
Of course, EX90 means excellent, with a score of 90 points out of a possible 100 for confirmation. 2E means she was classified excellent twice in her lifetime. GMD stands for Gold Medal Dam, awarded to cows with outstanding daughters. And DOM means Dam of Merit, given to cows whose sons have high genetic evaluations. It's basically the cow equivalent of a straight A report card with extra credit.
Thanks for clarifying. So what happened when these two genetic powerhouses were bred together?
Magic, Douglas. Pure magic. The dairy world's matchmakers dubbed it the Golden Cross. And this wasn't just some marketing mumbo-jumbo. This pairing was like peanut butter meeting jelly for the first time. A combination so perfect you wonder how we ever lived without it.
What made this cross so revolutionary?
Here's what made Dellia such a game changer. Back then, farmers often had to choose between production and type. Did they want great milk producers or cows that looked good enough to grace the cover of Holstein Monthly? It was like trying to find a supermodel who could also deadlift 300 pounds. Not impossible, but pretty darn rare.
And Delia managed to combine both.
She didn't just combine them, Douglas. She mastered them. Dellia said, "Hold my milk pail," and proceeded to shatter expectations faster than a bull in a china shop. She was the total package, defying the era's trade-offs between production and type.
That's impressive. Was there a scientific explanation for how she managed this?
Now we're getting science-y. Tim Abbott puts it this way: Dellia shattered the maternal-paternal dichotomy. In plain English, she got the best of both worlds.
How exactly did that work?
Her X chromosomes were like a genetic all-you-can-eat buffet. From Chief Mark, she inherited udder quality that would make any dairy farmer weep with joy. And from the Bell side, metabolic efficiency that could turn feed into milk like nobody's business.
That's quite a genetic combination.
This combination was rarer than a cow with a pilot's license. It's like Dellia's DNA looked at the usual genetic rules and said, "Nah, I'm good. I'll do my own thing."
So Delia had the genetic potential from birth. How did that translate into her career as a cow?
Well, Douglas, that brings us to 1991 and the Wisconsin Spring Show. Picture this. The show is hotter than a cow pie in July. The air's thick with anticipation, and probably a fair bit of manure smell, let's be honest.
Setting the scene nicely there, Bella.
Enter our girl Dellia, strutting her stuff like she owns the place. Judge Niles Wendorf takes one look at her and bam, grand champion baby. He's gushing about her tall, sharp frame and trouble-free udder, like he's describing the Mona Lisa of milk cows.
That's quite an achievement. But winning a show is one thing. How did she become such an industry legend?
Here's where Frank Regan enters our story. Frank was an Iowa breeder with more guts than a slaughterhouse. While everyone else is still picking their jaws up off the floor after Dellia's win, Frank's already whipping out his checkbook. Not really, but his gamble on Dellia changed everything. Dellia became the cornerstone of Regancrest Farm faster than you can say, "Holy Holstein." We're talking 76 registered daughters and 44 AI-sampled sons.
That's an incredible number of offspring.
And that's not all. Dellia's embryos were jetting off to Europe, Japan, and Brazil. She had more international travel than most humans. It's like Dellia looked at Regancrest and said, "Challenge accepted." She wasn't just producing calves, she was creating a dynasty.
I've heard there was a health scare with Delia shortly after Frank purchased her. Is that true?
Oh my goodness, yes. Brace yourselves for a plot twist that'll curdle your milk. Shortly after her grand entrance at Regancrest, Dellia decides to spice things up by ingesting a bunch of sand. Yeah, you heard that right, sand. Not exactly part of a balanced bovine breakfast.
That sounds serious. Sand impaction can be fatal for cows.
Most cows would have kicked the bucket after a stunt like that. But Delia, she bounces back like it's nothing. In fact, she starts pumping out embryos like they're going out of style, 15 per flush on average. That's not just impressive, that's downright miraculous.
15 embryos per flush, that's extraordinary.
Absolutely. Before you could say got milk, Delia's genetic material was more sought after than tickets to a rock concert. Breeders from Europe to Japan were lining up, cash in hand, ready to get a piece of the Delia pie.
So Delia's impact was already being felt internationally during her lifetime.
100%. But Douglas, her true legacy was just beginning to take shape through her sons. And boy, were they something special.
Tell us about Delia's sons, Bella. I understand they made quite an impact on the industry.
Grab your wallets, folks, because we're about to talk about some seriously expensive baby makers. You thought your kid's college fund was steep? That's chump change compared to what Delia's boys are worth.
Who were the stars among her sons?
First up, we've got Durham, an Elton son who's like the Michael Jordan of dairy bulls. He was named Premier Sire at World Dairy Expo not once, not twice, but 5 times. I mean, come on. At this point, they might as well rename it the Durham Dairy Expo.
5-time Premier Sire is quite an achievement. What made Durham so special?
Durham didn't just look pretty in the show ring. He revolutionized fertility traits with a plus 0.2 DPR. That's daughter pregnancy rate. For our listeners who aren't knee-deep in dairy jargon, this means Durham's daughters were significantly more likely to get pregnant than the average cow. It's like turning every cow into a baby-making machine.
So Durham combined show-worthy conformation with practical fertility traits. Who else was in Delia's all-star lineup?
Next up, we've got Die Hard. And boy, does this bull live up to his name. This roebuck son has sired a mind-boggling 1.75 million semen doses. That's not a typo, folks. 1.75 million. He's like the Energizer Bunny of the bull world. He just keeps going and going and going.
That's an incredible number. What kind of impact does that have on the industry?
Well, Douglas, if Die Hard's offspring formed their own country, it'd probably have a seat at the UN. Talk about leaving a legacy.
That's quite the visual. Any other standout sons we should know about?
Absolutely. Last but certainly not least, we've got Million. This outside son might not have the flashy numbers of his brothers, but don't you dare underestimate him. His descendants dominate cheese merit rankings.
Cheese merit? Can you explain that for our listeners?
Of course. Cheese merit is basically a measure of how well a cow's milk is suited for cheese production. It takes into account things like protein and fat content. Million's descendants excel in these traits, making them favorites among cheesemakers.
So next time I'm enjoying a nice cheddar, I might be tasting a bit of Million's genetic influence.
You got it. He's not just a bull. He's a one-man cheese factory.
These bulls clearly had a huge impact on the industry. What do the experts say about their influence?
Scott Culbertson puts it perfectly. He says Delia's impact through Durham alone transformed how we approach longevity in herds. That's not just a compliment, that's a revolution in a sentence. We're talking about changing the entire approach to dairy farming.
It sounds like Delia and her sons rewrote the rulebook overnight.
Exactly. But wait, there's more. Delia's influence didn't stop with her sons. Her daughters and granddaughters have been making waves too. Should we dive into that next?
Absolutely. Let's hear about the female side of Delia's dynasty.
Let's talk about Sandy Valley Planet Sapphire, Delia's great-granddaughter. This gal inherited the family talent in spades.
What makes Sapphire so special?
Sapphire is a planet daughter who quickly achieved gold medal dam status with 11 very good daughters. But her real claim to fame is her offspring, particularly 2 sons, Rubicon and Saloon.
Tell us about these bulls.
You know, Rubicon was the first bull to sell 500,000 sexed semen doses. That's 500,000 lady calves, people. And Saloon was a former #1 TPI sire. For our listeners who aren't familiar, TPI stands for Total Performance Index. It's basically the overall score that ranks bulls. Being #1 is like being the valedictorian of bull school.
That's quite the achievement. Greg Bauer from Sandy Valley Holsteins had something to say about the Sapphire line, didn't he?
He sure did. Greg says, the Sapphires are efficiency queens, great udders, trouble-free and built for robotic milking. Imagine a cow so perfect that even robots are impressed.
The reference to robotic milking is interesting. It shows how Delia's genetics have adapted to modern farming technologies.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about cookie-cutter mom Halo. This Goldwyn descendant is like the Beyoncé of the bovine world.
Who are Halo's notable offspring?
She's produced Helix, the 2018 Outcross Sire of the Year, and Halogen, a global conformation leader. It's like winning a Grammy, but for bulls.
It sounds like Delia's influence has spread far beyond Wisconsin. Let's talk about her global impact.
All right, folks, buckle up your overalls, because we're about to take a whirlwind tour of Delia's international superstars. These girls aren't just your average Bessies chewing cud in the back 40. They're the Beyoncés of the bovine world.
Where should we start our international tour?
Let's start in Switzerland with DH Gold Chip Darling. This gal isn't just a pretty face. She's a bona fide Swiss Expo champion. She was recently scored EX96 with an EX97 for her mammary system.
Those are incredible scores. For our listeners who might not be familiar with the classification system, can you explain what those numbers mean?
Of course. The classification system goes from poor to fair, good, very good, and finally excellent. Within the excellent category, cows are scored from 90 to 97. So an EX96 is nearly perfect, and an EX97 mammary system is about as close to utter perfection as you can get.
So DH Gold Chip Darling is essentially dairy royalty. Any other family connections we should know about?
She's got some serious family connections. Her maternal brother, Tietkeur Dorman Darlingo, is Europe's #1 conformation sire. Talk about keeping it in the family. It's like the Kardashians of the cow world, but with more utility and less drama.
Nice comparison. Let's continue our global tour. Where to next?
Let's head to British Columbia, Canada, where Elmbridge Goldwyn Darling holds court. This VG88 scored beauty isn't just another pretty face in the barn. She's a baby-making machine with the credentials to prove it.
What has she accomplished?
Get this. Darling has produced 28 brood stars. For our city-dwelling listeners, that's like having 28 kids who all grew up to be doctors or lawyers. It's the cow equivalent of being a supermom.
28 is impressive enough, but I heard she has some excellent daughters as well.
You bet. 9 EX daughters, to be exact. That's 9 daughters who scored excellent in conformation. It's like if Serena Williams had 9 daughters who all won Wimbledon.
No wonder she was recognized for her achievements.
Absolutely. In 2014, Darling was crowned BC Cow of the Year. That's right, an entire province looked at all their cows and said, yep, this one's the best we've got.
It's fascinating to see how Delia's genetics have been embraced globally. What does this international success tell us about her impact?
Great question, Douglas. When a cow like DH Gold Chip Darling wins in Switzerland, it's not just a blue ribbon for her owner. It's a statement to the world about what excellence looks like in dairy cattle. Farmers from the Alps to the Andes take notice.
So Delia's influence crosses borders and continents.
Absolutely. These global ambassadors prove that Delia's influence isn't confined to one farm, one state, or even one country. It's a worldwide phenomenon that's changing how we think about breeding, production, and what makes a truly excellent dairy cow.
Let's talk about how the genomic revolution has further amplified Delia's impact.
The genomic revolution has taken Delia's impact to a whole new level. For our listeners who might not be familiar, genomics is essentially the study of an animal's DNA to identify desirable traits.
How has genomic testing changed dairy breeding?
It's been a game changer, Douglas. According to a recent report, genomics has been the most important reason for improvements in milk, butterfat, and protein production, cow health, and cow longevity over the past 15 years.
And how does Delia fit into this genomic landscape?
Excited. Her genetic fingerprint is everywhere. Genomic testing has allowed breeders to really tap into the genetic gold mine that Delia represents. Her descendants are still topping the charts for important traits like production, health, and longevity.
It's remarkable to think about how one cow from Wisconsin could have such a lasting impact on the global dairy industry.
Nearly 4 decades after her birth, Delia's influence remains indelible in dairy herds worldwide. She didn't just raise the bar, she launched it into the stratosphere, challenging us to think bigger, breed smarter, and never settle for good enough in our pursuit of the perfect dairy cow.
What do you think is Delia's most significant contribution to the dairy industry?
I think it's her ability to bridge the gap between production and type. Before Delia, farmers often had to choose. Did they want beautiful cows or productive cows? Delia proved you could have both. She shattered the either-or mentality of dairy breeding.
So, she essentially created a new paradigm for dairy breeding.
Exactly. In a world where change is constant and progress is measured in increments, Delia represents a quantum leap, a paradigm shift on 4 legs that forever altered the course of dairy genetics.
Well, folks, I think it's safe to say that Snow-N Denises Dellia truly deserves her place in the pantheon of dairy legends. From Bob Snow's initial breeding vision to her global impact today, her story is nothing short of extraordinary.
She proved that a single cow could excel in production, conformation, longevity, and fertility, a combination once thought impossible. From her grand champion win at the 1991 Wisconsin Spring Show to becoming the cornerstone of Regancrest Farm, Delia's impact was immediate and profound.
Her sons, Durham, Die-Hard, and Million, became industry titans, revolutionizing everything from fertility traits to cheese merit rankings. Her daughters and granddaughters took her genetics global, winning championships from Switzerland to Canada.
And even in today's genomic era, Delia's influence continues to shape modern dairy breeding, with her descendants excelling in robotic milking efficiency and cheese yield improvements.
That's why Snow-N Denises Dellia will always be remembered as one of the greatest cows in dairy history, a testament to the extraordinary impact one exceptional animal can have on an entire industry.
The next time you pour yourself a glass of milk or enjoy a slice of cheese, remember there's a good chance you're tasting a bit of Delia's magic. Here's to the cow that changed everything.
That's all for today's episode of the Bovine Podcast. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you're looking to learn more about influential cows and breeding strategies, head over to our website, www.thebulvine.com, where we have articles, videos, and more podcasts just like this one.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, keep those udders swinging and those milk tanks full.
Bye, everyone. Don't forget to leave us a review if you enjoyed the show. Move on out.